Hello everyone, welcome back to Pokemon Tour, and today we're going from Sinnoh to Unova. And today's challenge actually had an inspiration. In the comic Jet's Black Nuzlocke by Zero Production Studios, spoilers but in the video by the way, Jet made it all the way to the league before her team ended up getting defeated by the Elite Four, except for two Pokemon in the comic, those being Little Dog and Red-Eye the Basculin. However, according to the descriptions in the comics, Red-Eye was the only one to make it out. Supposedly after that, Zero beat the game using only Red-Eye and the free Reshiram at the end of the game. But I got thinking, how easily could you have beaten the game with just Basculin? This is beating Pokémon Black using only a fish. I needed to find one first, and I did. This is Fang, a very powerful Basculin. Now for some training. The first Patrat we fought was level 5, and he OHKO'd us with a tackle, which puts us at the lowest I felt in Pokemon Tour so far. Like, I've lost several battles in this series, but never to just straight up wild Pokemon at the very beginning of the game. Eventually we leveled up against some level 1 Lillipups, but that was as close as we got to a fail immediately. Next was a Charon battle, and I was hoping for a flinch. Nat 20, baby! Next was to battle Lenora, which, I lost. I noticed a lot of problems here. But the main thing was, I didn't feel like I knew how to use Fang the Basculin. I decided to look for some items. Apparently, you can actually get a Mystic Water in a random house depending on what starter you said you picked. Lucky me, I can actually use Deception and just say Oshawott. That was easy. So now I had a Mystic Water and was able to give that to Fang. Back in Lenora's gym, she started with Herdier, who activated Intimidate, lowering Fang's attack stat. We attacked each other, this resulted in Lenora healing. I decided this time to use Aqua Jet instead of Headbutt, which ended up KOing Herdier. This is when I learned something. Basculin is apparently extremely overpowered in early game Pokemon and won't really be a bad mon for a long time. It was at this point I learned how to use Fang, the ability Adaptability, which makes all water moves on Basculin do double damage. So now Aqua Jet, which has 40 base power, has now become 80 base power. This is overpowered as heck. Next was Watchog, and we used Aqua Jet and KO'd them. We got our first badge. Things were going better than they were before, but now it's time to fight Burr, who has a defensive Pokemon and a fully evolved Grass type. I decided to go up to level 27 and went into the gym. He led with Whirlipede, and we used Aqua Jet, KOing them. Next was Leavanny, and we used Headbutt. We used it again, and this time they used String Shot, slowing us down. They used Razor Leaf next, but we survived and we managed to defeat them with Headbutt. Next was Dwebble, who we easily OHKO'd with Aqua Jet. That's the second badge. Now that was a pretty flawless victory, but next is the Electric Gym, which is super effective against Fang. I actually got so worried I leveled up all the way to level 35. However, weirdly enough, that was overkill because I ended up sweeping her whole team. I don't know how I did that. That was an easy victory. That's 3 badges. The strategy of spamming water attacks, especially with us being so overleveled, was so good apparently that we could OHKO most of our opponents. This resulted in us taking out the next 5 gym leaders easily. We got all the way to the 8th gym and got all of our badges. Fang had also grown pretty powerful at this point, but now it was time for the league. First was Chantal and her ghost types, along with her mummy Cofagrigus. There would be a few problems here since adaptability would be gone, but because of that, I decided to switch out the Mystic Water for the Black Glasses to power up our Crunch attacks and allow us to do super effective damage to our whole team. Chantal was simple. Next was Grimsley and his Dark types. Now, for this, I decided to switch back to the Mystic Water and power up our water attacks again since we'd have adaptability the whole time. We swept in with Waterfall. Next was Caitlyn and her Psychic types. So I switched out the Mystic Water again, this time for the Extra Belt to power up any super effective attacks, rather than just our Dark ones. Caitlyn was a sweep. Finally was Marshall, who was going to be kind of tough, but I decided to just switch back out for the Mystic Water so we had powered up water attacks. Marshall was easy. Team Plasma then suddenly decided to show their giant stinking castle they had stored underground. This game is so ridiculous. Even crazier though, Reshiram showed up, but must have seen us go up against the Elite Four and ran away in fear. Hi, I just wanted to explain how I had only one Pokemon in my party because Reshiram forces his way into your party here. And simply, if you lose the fight, you can store Reshiram in your PC afterwards, and thus you can just move on. You don't need to have Reshiram in your party for this fight technically. Now, despite Team Plasma having basically archaic methods of building, I had a pretty good feeling about this end battle. Oh gods, it's Zekrom! This battle would definitely require some recomposition. I started by getting Fang up to level 71 so that we could take the fusion bolts a bit better. While training, I also found the normal gems so that I could give Fang a bit of extra power so that we could defeat Zekrom a little easier. This would work to an extent, but it was still going to be a really hard fight. We lost quite a few times to Zekrom and also that Carracosta. Since it had Sturdy, we couldn't just OHKO it, and we'd have to take a hit from it. Now for attempt 15. First was the Zekrom. We used Return, doing most of their health and consuming the normal gen. She used Fusion Bolt, but this time it only took Fang down to 48 HP, which was a lot, but we'd live with it. We used Return again and took out Zekrom. Next was Zoroark and Klinklang. We used Waterfall and OHKO'd them both. Next was the dreaded Carracosta. We used Waterfall, which got Carracosta into Sturdy. I hoped for Stone Edge to miss, but instead Carracosta flinched. This was the run. We used Waterfall as N was healing, and we KO'd the Carracosta. Finally was Archeops and Vanillux. We used Waterfall again and OHKO'd them both, defeating N. And then Ghetsis showed up with a team built to fight Fang. And when I say built to fight Fang, I mean it. He's got this stinking Cofagrigus with Mummy, Protect, Toxic. If any of those moves hit, we're done for. Then there's Bouffalant, Wild Charge and Reckless, meaning it's powered up and on a very strong physical attacker. Then there's Electros, an electric type with Wild Charge. And finally is Hydreigon with a pesky dragon typing. This was going to be a tough fight, so I needed to level up Fang again. We got to level 76, and then we got an item on Fang again, the Mystic Water. Finally, it was time to start the fight. He led with Cofagrigus, and we used Waterfall, KOing them, but also getting hit by that Mummy. Next was Bouffalant. We used Waterfall, but didn't OHKO them immediately, so they landed a Head Charge, which took themselves out but did big damage to us. Next was the Electros, so we used Waterfall and OHKO'd them. Next was Hydreigon. We used Return doing big damage, but it didn't do enough. We got hit with Dragon Pulse, which got us down to about 45 HP. We used Return again and defeated the Hydreigon. Next was Ghetsis' Seismitoad and Bisharp. We used Waterfall and OHKO'd them both, winning us the battle against Ghetsis. Trans rights have once again been defended from the evil Ghetsis, but we only defeated Team Plasma. This challenge isn't over yet. Fang still needs to become the champion of Unova. I needed to do some training first, so I decided to first get the Ice Beam TM from the Giant Crater, which is in a post-game location for some reason, and then decided to level up to level 85. This would have to do in order for us to get through the league. It was at this point that I saw Cynthia, who was pretty ticked that I defeated her in the last challenge. Infernape lived again? Thank you, Infernape. That's amazing. Close combat! And we OHKO'd the Garchomp! Now, I just talked a big game, but this was going to be really tough. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be too worried, but when you're going into a fight like this with just Basculin, everything is a problem. This battle took so many tries. We needed to recomp, but we were just getting nowhere on so many of these attempts. It was at this point that I decided to swap out Crunch for Return, since it would do a little extra damage, just not super effective damage. And I also went up to level 90, keeping the Mystic Water though, since that would still be very helpful. We went in again. She led with Spiritomb, and we used Waterfall, which OHKO'd them. Next was Electros, who we also OHKO'd with Waterfall. Next was Braviary, and we used Waterfall again, but it didn't OHKO. However, we got the flinch, allowing us to OHKO Braviary afterwards. Next was Lucario, who we OHKO'd with Waterfall as well. Next was Garchomp. We used Ice Beam, which almost KO'd them, but they lived. But then they used Dragon Rush and missed. This allowed us to use Ice Beam again and defeat Garchomp. Cynthia's last Pokemon was Milotic. And since we hadn't taken any damage up to this point, Milotic's bulk wasn't really going to do anything that it was able to do in the last attempt, allowing us to use Return and defeat Cynthia again, sweeping her, this time with just a fish. After settling beef between Cynthia and I, it was time for us to fight the League. Except for one thing. Chern had actually disqualified my 8th gym badge, saying that he wasn't really trying. You sore frickin' loser! Chern led with Liepard and had him use Fake Out, which flinched us on the first turn. We OHKO'd them the next turn with Waterfall, and then was Gigalith. We used Waterfall again, but they lived thanks to Sturdy. Luckily, we got hit with a Stone Edge Mist and KO'd them with Aqua Jet. Next was Haxorus. And I didn't have Ice Beam anymore. We hit them pretty hard with Return, but they were able to defeat us next turn thanks to their Dragon Gem powered up Outrage. Okay, maybe not a sore loser. We ended up switching out the Mystic Water for the Expert Belt, and also switched out Return for Ice Beam. This would give us the edge we could use to defeat that Haxorus. We went in again against Liepard, and we got hit by Fake Out before using Waterfall to take them out. Next was Gigalith. We used Waterfall, causing a flinch, and then took them out next turn with Aqua Jet. Next was Haxorus, so we used Ice Beam, and thanks to the Expert Belt, we OHKO'd the Haxorus. Next was Samurott, and we used Crunch. And then Samurott hit us with Hydro Pump. We were fine, but then used Crunch again before getting hit by another Hydro Pump. This one got us pretty low, but we used Aqua Jet and took them out. Next was Simisear and Unfezant, who couldn't do much to us, so we used Waterfall and took them both out, winning us the 8th badge again. Next challenge is the Elite Four, and this time they're not holding back so that I can go fight N. So their teams are much stronger than they were last time. I had an easy time with most of the Elite Four. Then we got to Caitlyn, who gave us a run for our money. Our power strats weren't letting us win against her bulky team unless we used a bit more strategy. She led with Masharna. We used Waterfall, which didn't OHKO or flinch, but her Hypnosis missed, allowing us to take her out next turn. Next was Gothitelle and Reuniclus. We used Waterfall, OHKOing both of them. Next was Metagross, and we used Waterfall hoping for a flinch so that they wouldn't hit us with Giga Impact. But it didn't work. But then she used Bullet Punch and did almost no damage. Bro, what are you doing? You could have had this. Next we used Aqua Jet, KOing them next turn. Next was Bronzong. We used Waterfall, which didn't KO, but we got the flinch this time. We picked up the KO next turn using Aqua Jet, and finally was Sigilith, who we OHKO'd with Waterfall, winning us the battle. That was the Elite Four defeated, and now it was time to go up against Champion Alder. We went in with Fang at level 95 and holding the Mystic Water. I had 2 failed attempts before I had the good one. He led with Excelgor, and we used Waterfall, which OHKO'd them. Next was Escavalier. We used Waterfall, which didn't OHKO, allowing Escavalier to use Aerial Ace. We used Aqua Jet again, and KO'd them next turn. Next was Volcarona, who has the Flame Body ability. We used Waterfall, and thankfully, we didn't get burned. Next was Bouffalon, and we used Waterfall. I didn't OHKO, but we still did flinch, and this time we used Aqua Jet and took them out. Next was Druddigon. We used Ice Beam to avoid Rough Skin, and only did about half. They used Night Slash, bringing us down to half too. We used Ice Beam again and KO'd them. Finally was Vanillux, and it was time for one more OHKO, defeating Alder. Just in case you don't believe it, here's the picture of me actually having won the fight with just Fang. So yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, share this video with everyone you know and love, and in the next one, we're heading to Kalos. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!